Good evening. Welcome to the National COVID-19 Resiliency Network's community conversation titled The COVID-19 Vaccine, Keeping It 100. Tonight, we have a dynamic group of panelists who are here to answer questions about the COVID-19 vaccine, including boosters, as well as guidance for children between 5 and 12 years old. Our first panelist name is Ms. Jonetta Bell Kelly. She represents the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Our second panelist is Dr. Mary McEnther, and she represents the State Department of Public Health in Alabama, as well as Ms. Pamela Mejia from Berkeley Media Studies Group. And we also have tonight our moderator, Dr. Rhonda Holliday, professor at Morehouse School of Medicine. I'll turn it over to Dr. Holliday.
All right. Thank you for that introduction, Brittany. I'd like to go ahead and get right into our conversation tonight. I think it will be a dynamic conversation with our panelists. And specifically, we want to talk about misinformation. So my first question, and Pam or Jornetta, to pose to either one of you is, what are some strategies and tips to determine if information is truthful and or accurate?
This is Dr. McIntyre. When it comes down to determining whether information is truthful or accurate, I tell folks to always look for the source. Pay attention to actually who that message is coming from. Look for someone that you trust or a source that you trust. And that should not be, and I'm gonna tell you, get your information from somewhere other than social media. Even though we put information on social media that is trusted, there is a lot of misinformation out there. So don't look just for what the person is saying. Look for a reference or a link, something that will take you to somewhere where you can look to see, is it an NIH, is it an article that was actually published in a journal, peer-reviewed? Is it a hospital provider that you trust? Those are resources and stuff you need to actually look for. Look for trusted voices.
Okay, thank you. So trusted voices are really important. Pam or Jornetta, do you all have anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yes, I'd like to add to what Dr. McIntyre said. Another thing, we all do it. We are strolling and scrolling through social media, or we'll hear things and we'll see something that catches our attention and it'll get us fired up, right? And it could get us fired up in a good way or a bad way. But the thing we have to remember is, don't be so quick to share something. So even if it is good information, make sure it's credible and sourceful first, because even if it's good information, but it comes from a source that is not reputable, then in the future, if that source is somehow found to not be credible, it could just destroy the message. So it's really important to make sure you don't get so fired up and ready and excited, or just like, how dare they, and share this message, whether it's a good message or a bad message. And yes, I completely agree with Dr. McIntyre about know who's saying the message. Can you trust that person? And then do trustworthy sources actually back up that person, when you're really looking into that sort of thing. Also, it's a few ways that a lot of news sites, can trick you. So you just have to be really careful, because there are certain tactics that's used, like copying and pasting names of real sites and then changing them a little to look credible and get clicks, because a lot of marketing is run by the clicks and the interest in something. So you just have to be really careful that you don't fall prey to that sort of thing. Another way is just making sure you're not bringing your own biases into the mix. Sometimes we can have something called confirmation bias, which causes us to believe claims that already, match how we feel. So, for example, if being a vegetarian is really important to you, you might believe and share an article about the negative effects of eating meat, even if they aren't true. So even if something really, if you read it and it feels good and it's getting the message going, it's still really important to make sure it's a credible message.
Yeah, very important. And Pam, is there anything you would like to add to this discussion?
Oh, well, thank you for having me, and I really appreciate the question. So I'm a media researcher, have been for the last 11 years. So that means that everything I do is focused on identifying and better understanding how the media that surrounds us and that we consume can shape the decisions we make, the things that the beliefs that we have, the actions that we take. And so I think everything that everyone else has said has been really important and profound. And I would just sort of reiterate looking at sources. So if you are looking on social media or the internet, sometimes it's helpful to just have a couple of, like almost a checklist to use to see whether the source you're looking at is reputable. So some basic things you can do: look at the URL. A .org or a .net is often going to be a little bit, .org being the best, not always, but often, is often going to be a better source of information than a .com, which is a company, which is going to be a privately owned company of some sort. Another thing to look at is the data. Is the data that's being referenced, is there a citation for it? And where does that citation take you? Does it take you to the CDC? Does it take you to the NIH? How recently was that data updated? So unfortunately, in some medical misinformation circles, there's a tendency to cite very old data that has since been debunked and disproved, but that folks refer to again and again, hoping that maybe, or with the expectation that it won't be noticed that the date on it is 1997. For instance, which, a while ago, I think we can all agree. I always suggest that folks, if they're curious, take a look at the About Us section or the background section on a website. Take a look at, do they list who their funders are? There's certain keywords and watchwords that can often suggest vaccine hesitancy. Terms like medical freedom is a very commonly used term, or freedom of decision making. Those can be terms that are used in by folks who are encouraging skepticism of vaccinations to build their case. Not to say that those terms are always going to be used, but sometimes if you see a lot of them, that can, in conjunction with other factors, that can perhaps be a sign that you're looking at a website or a resource that might not be the most up to date, the most grounded in fact, or the most scientifically reputable. So those would be just a few things that I would suggest as you are looking through social media, as you are scrolling through and deciding what to share, some of those questions around URL, around data, around citations, and around the About Me section, and some of those watchwords like medical freedom, freedom of choice, et cetera, can be good ways to start assessing whether what you're looking at is a site that you want to be then lifting up into the world and into the conversation.
Oh, great. These are some wonderful tips for people to determine whether or not their sources of information are actually credible. So my next question that I will pose to Joynetta: how has misinformation impacted our ability to emerge from the pandemic and return to what we would consider to be normal?
That's a great question. And, we really need to build health and digital literacy at individual and community levels. It's most information is shared, at interpersonal level and gains traction, in specific communities, whether it's online or offline. So where information is shared and conversations take place, that's where the message will come from. So understanding themes of misinformation and the information gaps that actually exist, and then developing programmatic and communications approaches that address these underlying narratives is really critical to better addressing the challenges of the infodemic. And it's really important in my work to promote vaccine uptake. So some of the main takeaways that I would say, as far as how it's impacted our ability to emerge. First of all, we have to be honest, there's no silver bullet with this. We are still working on it. Limited tools exist to address mis and disinformation. And, while many current tactics like requesting post message takedowns. They help limit misinformation exposure, but debunking misinformation alone really ignores the real larger social and cultural forces that actually cause misinformation to emerge and to gain traction. Another thing is, traditional risk communication and social media outreach approaches, just are not really sufficient right now. So, understanding underlying themes to misinformation as it spreads and developing, again, programmatic and communications approaches to address it is critical to managing health infodemics. And, lastly, to address the current infodemic and future health infodemics, we must use an evidence-based approach. And we've said that several times already. We have to leverage the socio-behavioral and epidemiological insights and execute a plan, transparently to reduce the spread and harm of misinformation and promote accurate, credible information. And, again, there's no silver bullet. I think as this pandemic continues, unfortunately, we're all still learning, we're still working, we're still trying to figure things out. But it's really just important that we make sure we are diligently working, and just don't beat ourselves up so much, and still continue to work, because there's not one approach that really works. There's a lot of underlying issues that we have to address before we can officially come out of this.
All right. And I heard you mention the word infodemic. What exactly is infodemic? Can you tell us what is that?
So I guess the simplest way to describe it is, we know what a pandemic is. We know what, an epidemic is. So it's when information is spread so far and wide that it's just become commonplace. It's something that, like when I made the example earlier about the vegetarian, if you want to prove that, or when you have a certain bias that says, well, I'm a vegetarian and everyone else should be a vegetarian. When you start to spread something and it goes past the community, and it becomes commonplace language or commonplace knowledge, I think that's a simple way of describing an infodemic. I don't know if others have a better meaning, but I think just to put things in plain and simple terms, it's when information spreads and it becomes commonplace.
And I'm gonna just kind of support that. It also includes, of course, misinformation and disinformation that basically you lose control of, just like with what happens with a pandemic. The reality is that, it spreads, and what's happened because of the epidemic is that we have a lot of misinformation and disinformation that's gotten out of control. It's spread everywhere, all kind of sources, regardless of what media you're looking at. It's in writing, it's on social media. And I'm gonna say this pandemic has been unprecedented, not just because of the numbers of people that are died, but because of the amount of information that has spread so quickly, so fast. And you can have something that comes up that's not based on anything. There's no resource or citation for it, but all of a sudden it's everywhere, it's all over, and you're trying to get a handle on it. That's what an epidemic is. And that's what we have. It's what's really driven a lot of what is going on with the inability to get some people vaccinated. I'm gonna say that because of the information that they've been exposed to. And even though we talk about trusted sources, using those trusted sources, there are a lot of people out there that you would routinely think would be trusted sources that are also part of the infodemic, as far as getting that information and it going everywhere, that we have to deal with, which is why we come back and we say, so tell me what sources that, and I'll name some that you would trust. If I give you information from Mayo Clinic, if I give you information from UAB, I mean, who is a provider or entity that you trust, and then provide them with that information. A lot of times you can try to make a little inway and get some things done, but it's difficult. But first of all, don't discount what people believe. You have to be able to show them where that information is and where you can actually be able to counter that. Because a lot of times, like I tell them, if they believe it, unless you can provide the information that they actually can say, okay, I understand, you're not going to get any changes through.
And you brought up something that I think is really important, and that is misinformation or even sometimes disinformation coming from what we would consider to be trusted sources. And so I just want to follow up with that and ask, how do you address misinformation when it is coming from a medical professional or even a scientist? Yeah, how do you address that?
You have to address it head on. I'm gonna tell you, this is something that we're not been really good at from a public health has never been the one, a lot of times in the past, we kind of let stuff go. We were more reactive instead of being proactive when it came down to providing that information. This is a time, and I'm gonna say that we even started out a little bit like that with this pandemic. But realizing that if you don't hit it head on and address the actual sources and provide the information to show that. And then I'm gonna tell you, we've heard a lot of stuff about, well, you can't believe what Dr. Fauci says or CDC says or NIH says, but the reality is then who do you believe? You believe those researchers that are out there doing the work. You believe those people that have been doing this all of their life. And when there's a physician or physicians that are also part of the problem, then you address that. So we pulled in the medical board, we pulled in the associations that these providers work for. We've talked directly with them about the type of information that they're given. We've recognized that some of the information provided is not accurate, and especially if information is one-sided. And a lot of times what disinformation does is it's not actually wrong, but you give part of the statistics and not all of the statistics. So you can actually move people in the wrong direction by being incomplete with the information that's given without giving information that's bad. And an example of that is, if I am really trying to move people away from getting vaccinated, then what I do is I focus on the numbers associated with the complications and adverse reactions and the side effects from the vaccines, but I say nothing about the complications or the long haul COVID or the number of people that have died from getting the disease itself. I talk about the side effects and the problems with the medication, but I don't give the numbers on the other side that are much higher, so that people then think that there are a lot of issues on one side because they've not received any information about the other statistics.
All right. Well, that's some really great information. And I really like you pointing out that sometimes disinformation is really about not presenting the entire picture and only presenting what supports the argument that you're trying to make. I am going to turn it over to Brittany now, and she's going to ask a few more questions.
Thank you, everyone. And this has been a really insightful discussion, so I'm glad that we're having it. We also wanted to know from your perspectives, what are some of the key things at this point in the pandemic that you'd like people to understand about COVID-19?
Well, I can start this one off. I know we all have some really good information to share, but I think the foundation of it is first listening and making sure people understand what COVID-19 is. I think it's still some confusion, some fogginess about what it is. You know, it was it was such a highly charged time when it came out. People brought in politics, it mixed in with public health, and it just turned into a big mess. So I think it's really important that we first understand and that we teach people about COVID-19. We teach them about the umbrella of coronaviruses that exist and that have existed. We teach them about mRNA, that it's been used in several cancer treatments. It's been used over the years. It's not something that just came out of the heavens from somewhere in some lab, this past year or last year. It's really important to make sure people understand that, you know, you can get the vaccine, but it doesn't mean that you won't get COVID. And I think that's one of the biggest, issues that that comes to me from my family, from colleagues, from constituents in the community. Just because you get the shot doesn't mean that you won't get COVID-19. However, it means that if you get the shot, it means that it'll reduce the chances of you getting really, really sick or being hospitalized or die. So I think that's something that we have to make sure, because we hear it all the time and we see it over Facebook. We see, oh, my uncle got the vaccine but he died. And then for instance, with Colin Powell, we hear, well, see, he got the shot, he died, but he also had underlying medical conditions. And one thing we have to realize is that in addition to underlying medical conditions, it still could happen to someone. Someone could get really sick and possibly pass away, but that's a very small percentage, and the benefits outweigh the risks. When it comes to getting vaccinated, as an example, we think about things like the flu. No one ever second guess if we get the flu shot. Yeah, I might get the flu a few months later, but it was just kind of like, oh man, I got the flu. But with this, it's just like, see, I still got it. I still got COVID, so I think that we have to make sure, first of all, that we're not so trying to punch it in and shots in arms. Let's make sure everybody gets a shot. We want to make sure people are educated and understand everything about this. We want to make sure, again, they understand the history, they understand that, you possibly still could get it, but it will keep you from being hospitalized, and it'll help others around you not get so sick as well. So I think those are some of the key messages that I make sure that I deliver when I'm doing outreach and when I'm speaking to our constituents and funded partners. So yeah, I think that's the basis of it. And if anyone else would like to add.
What I try to focus on is that it's more than just about us, you. For me, for all of us, we need to kind of say, well, why was it so important to get vaccinated? For me, even though I have health issues and problems, I got vaccinated because I've got grandchildren, great nieces and nephews that are little. 2-year-old, brand new baby, he'll be 2 months old on the 6th. They can't get vaccinated, and it would destroy me to be the source of an infection for them. Okay. I would, there have been people, the whole thing is with trying to protect those that are really at the highest risk. Some of them that are vaccinated, one of them is my daughter. She's had her, she's immunocompromised. So regardless of the fact that she's received 3 doses of the vaccine, she still remains at risk. So that people who are not vaccinated that could be around her could actually cause her to lose her life. So we're vaccinated. I'm vaccinated because of them. I'm vaccinated to protect my family, my friends, my grandchildren, my children, and myself. So it's more than just about me. And I'm gonna say this, one of the things that we've had one of the huge issues, and I told somebody the other day that's really been bothering me is what if with the smallpox and polio, we had the type of response that people have had to the COVID vaccine, where it became such a political issue that people did not think about their family, friends, or their neighbors? Where would we be today if that had occurred? Where would we be when it comes down to smallpox and polio? I look at that and I said, you know what? I have a smallpox scar. Okay. I am sure that tells you how old I am, by the way, but I am sure that my parents had no idea of what was in that vaccine when it was offered. Okay. But they did know. My mom, one of her siblings before she was born died. Okay. Because of that. So they knew the history behind not doing it. and they made sure that they got their children and themselves protected. We didn't have all of this that's going back and forth about this, but I looked and somebody said with the vaccine, I sent to somebody recently what the complications and the side effects were with the vaccine that was used for smallpox, and it had clearly on there with the dry vax, it was a virus that was frozen, okay? Not the initial form, but the second one, okay? So that people were being given a live virus, okay? And people died. People got extremely sick, but most people survived. This is not this, but this has become such an issue with the COVID-19 vaccine. And that's what we try to remind people of. It's extremely important to think about the overall impact. And that's why we're still where we are with this pandemic.
And one thing to point out about what you just said, Dr. McIntyre, this vaccine is so different because it's not even the virus. It's not the virus at all. So, you know, it's not like it's a live virus is being injected into someone. It's the contents of it are instructions so that your body knows how to fight this thing if it comes, you know. Yes, it's compared to a doctor in Louisiana on a panel one time gave a really good analogy. He said that you can look at the vaccine like a football team. So you have your first string, who you know is playing, and they're the superstars. But then you have the second and third strings who they sit on the bench and they're ready. So the second and third strings, they train with the team. They are ready. They're lifting weights. They're running the plays. They're ready, and you know they may never be used. You know, if that first string doesn't get hurt or doesn't have to leave the game, they might not ever be used. So that's kind of how the vaccine is that's kind of like how the vaccine is. You know, your immune system serves as that first string. You know, you already have it in you, you know, everything's fighting good. But that second and third string, those are the ones who come in and they're like, okay, I recognize that thing right there. I learned, I trained, I got strong, I did what I needed to do what the first string does. So here I am. Let's fight it. You know, so that's kind of what the vaccine is. And again, it's not the actual virus
No
that's
live
injected.
virus at
Right. Yes.
all. And that's what, and there's a lot of stuff out there with that, with having to explain to people there is no virus in this, but you've taken vaccines in the past that had virus. There are no fetal cells in it. Okay. That's the other thing we have to go through all the time that I run into with people in issues. There's a process. Yes, there were things along the way, but there are no fetal or aborted cells within it. And I don't know whether you all have heard this about that there's an enzyme called luciferase in it. There's no enzyme called luciferase as part of this. There are a lot of things that have been actually identified as being in this vaccine that are not there. And like I said, you know, we've taken vaccines forever. But now all of a sudden there's an issue with how they were made or what's in the vaccine. There is no live virus in this vaccine.
And I want to dig deeper into that. How can someone find the ingredients in the vaccine? What's a trusted source that you all would recommend if someone wanted to know exactly what was in it?
I mean, there are a lot of them. CDC.
I actually have, I'm looking on the
That's what
floor
I'm saying.
because I dropped.
And we have it on our website.
Yes, there, I have a note card that I dropped on the floor. Let me see if I can. And it's actually addressing that. It is actually addressing that information, and sorry. It fell into the abyss of work that I have going on down here on the floor. But that information is available on, I believe it's the NIH website.
CDC has it on there.
But
So what we can do is we can make sure that everyone who's registered for this event will make sure that they receive that link, so that if that is something that is an area of concern for them, that they can find a trusted source to review those ingredients.
We actually took the information from NIH. CDC created a one-pager that put the ingredients for all three side by side because it made it easier for people. So it's actually a one-pager that we have on the FDA, on the ADPH website. And I'll see if I can get it and put it as a link in the chat. Okay.
Okay, great.
Yes, and it's a really good explanation. It lists all of the alloys and everything that that are rumored to be in it. It shows everything that's not in it, and it lists it one by one. It talks about all metals, everything, and it's a great resource. And I hate that it has disappeared out of nowhere. So I'm sorry about that. But
Well, we
yes,
appreciate you mentioning it, so we'll definitely make sure that we send it to the registrants. I want to switch gears just a little bit. Janetta, you talked about making sure that we really allow people to listen and hear all the information about COVID-19. And about a couple months ago, we did hear that there were some variants that had emerged, especially Delta. So what would you like, our audience to know tonight about Delta variant, as well as other variants, and the relationship with the current COVID-19 vaccines that we have available?
yes, that's a great question. And, that's something that is a very common question about these variants, because I've heard people say there's COVID-19 and then there's variants. So a lot of people don't even understand that it is COVID-19, but there are different variations of it. So again, the first thing is understanding and education. It's so very important to go to a website like the CDC site, any reputable source, and first to learn what a variant is. Do a little research, understand that, a variant simply means that as long as a virus is alive, it's going to change, it's going to mutate. And that's what variants are. So far, Delta makes the 7th variant. There, the 6 before, like the first one started in South Africa. I'm sorry, initially it was detected in the UK, and then the second one from South Africa, the third in Brazil, so the list goes on and on. So this last Delta variant is the one that is the most popular, the one that's most talked about, because it is, kind of the most recent and the most, it's gained, I feel like, the most traction in the news, because it is a more deadly or a more transmissible variant. So it's really important that we understand, again, the education behind it. What is a variant? How does it all fall into the COVID spectrum? And then mainly understand that as long as this virus is still here, it can mutate to another variant that could be even more highly transmissible or more deadly or get you sicker. So that's why it's so important for folks to really have a gut check and a heart check, and make sure you use data. And when you make the decision to get vaccinated in your families, just really think about the fact that, if this thing doesn't go away, it can grow and get worse and worse and worse. And we wanted to leave. We wanted to get out of here so that, not that we can get back to normal, but so that we can, use what we've learned and get ourselves ready for the next thing that comes. And who knows, it may not be another virus, but it could be something else. And it teaches us life lessons about emergency preparedness. It teaches us about taking care of our bodies so that, we don't have underlying conditions that could cause us to get really sick in the future when something else strikes. So yes, but as far as variants are concerned, it's very important to make sure we understand that, as long as the virus is still here, it will change, it will mutate, and then another variant will show up.
Thank
I just
you.
wanted to kind of add to that. When we think about what happens with influenza, the flu virus, and that every year, hopefully we won't get to be, that there'll be some stability because of this vaccine, the vaccine. But the quicker we get vaccinated fully, the more likely we are to slow down the changes that the virus will go through to make more variants. And that's what we keep trying to explain to people. The longer we just kind of have a few, the more likely we are to end up with more variants. And this is the thing, we don't want a variant that will respond to none of the vaccines that we have, because it would be like having to start all over again. So the quicker we all get fully vaccinated, that can get fully vaccinated, the better off we all will be.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I think to close us out, I'd love for Pamela to kind of talk to us about maybe what you're hearing in the media in regards to boosters, and what concerns you think we should be addressing in this conversation. So what should we know about boosters, as a lot of people have had their first dose and their second dose months ago, and now they're contemplating, should they get their booster?
Right. That's a great question. And thank you again for having me here. So, I want to say before I move into that, because I think that there is some conversation around it, but so a lot of the work that my organization, Berkeley Media Studies Group, does is around strategic communication. And that's in like helping people communicate as effectively as possible about the change that they want to see and the work that they want to do. And when it comes to vaccines, COVID-19 vaccine in particular, we know that the vaccines are safe, that they are effective, and that they are absolutely essential to getting us out of the place that we are in and moving us through this pandemic and into the next phase, hopefully a better one. And it can be really, really hard to communicate about some of the things that folks have expressed here today. So I just kind of wanted to say out loud a couple of things that we've found to be particularly effective. If you're ever confronted, for example, by folks in your sphere, people in your circles, people that you love and trust who are maybe spreading misinformation, or who are asking you, or part of like spreading some of that. I think it's pretty important because, one thing that's really tempting to do is to repeat what we've heard, to say that it's not true. You may have heard that the vaccine does this, this, and this, but actually no. And that's important. But the thing is when we give more airtime to that misinformation, we reinforce it. That's why I always suggest against doing things like myth fact, because people are going to see that myth, and that's going to be what's going to sink in. So sometimes, for example, when you hear misinformation or you hear somebody say something about the vaccine that's really harmful, or that you want to make sure that they're not getting more entrenched in, it can be helpful to do something kind of called a truth sandwich. So that's where you start with what's true. You acknowledge what's going on. You acknowledge, I know that there's been a lot of questions about the safety of the vaccines, without repeating the misinformation you've heard, without, giving more airtime to that lie or that falsehood. And then you close with the truth again. So it's truth on both sides, giving a little bit of acknowledgement so that people know that they're being heard, and they understand that you understand and are reacting to and are with them in trying to think through this harmful information. But you're starting and ending with the truth. And in the meantime, you're not repeating what they've said, giving it more airtime, more rent-free space in their head, right? And in this case, so I just really wanted to say that out loud. I think if that's something that, people could come away from this with a sense of, it's that sometimes it's really helpful to have an approach in mind for when you're confronted by people in your life, people who you love and trust and want to retain those relationships with. There are strategies to help people pivot into looking up different information or having a more evidence-based approach to their decisions that they make about vaccination, without repeating and without shaming, or without burning the bridge of that relationship in a way that makes it impossible to come back to the conversation, to the relationship that you have with them, and the relationship that you want to preserve long after this pandemic is over. So that's just one thing I did want to say. I think it connects a little bit more to some of what we were talking about in terms of misinformation earlier, but I do think it's important, and I always like to give kind of it as it's just a tool that's really helpful.
I think that's super valuable, because a lot of our conversations around communications can really be honing in on digital communications. Like Dr. McIntyre mentioned social media, and Dr. Janetta Bell Kelly has mentioned, the websites, but interpersonal communication is also playing a very big role. That word of mouth is still happening at rapid rates as well. So thank you for that, Pamela.
Of course. No, I appreciate that. And I just wanted to make sure to say it out loud, because I find it very helpful in my own life, not only my professional, but also my personal life as a mom and a wife and a daughter and a daughter-in-law and all the other, spaces I occupy and people that I am. So I hope that that's a helpful resource for people. And there's a lot more information I can provide about that, or that's available through my organization's website. When it comes to talking about boosters, media narratives about boosters or Delta variants or any variants, I don't have a full data set that I can cite on what the information looks like. The news media is changing every day with what's out there. and what's known, what's unknown. The things I guess I would say that might be important to reflect on, or in general in terms of communication, is that we don't necessarily, when we're working with people, when we're talking to people, we don't necessarily know the media environment that they're living in. And people aren't making their decisions about vaccination in a vacuum. It's affected by everything that's around them, including the media that they're exposed to, the messages they hear, the people that they talk to, the sources that they look to, the beliefs they hold, things like all the different factors that affect our decision making, or maybe their political leanings, what ads they get on Facebook, any number of other things. So I would say that it's really important, as we're reflecting on how to message around boosters, to be cognizant that we're coming up against a very crowded media environment, and that some of the things that we've talked about here today around being really clear about where good sources of information are, about not repeating myths and giving them more airspace, about drawing on trusted messengers and helping those trusted messengers to meet people where they are, to acknowledge, yeah, this is confusing and there's a lot of conflicting information, but here's what you really need to know. Right? So that people can feel heard, and that people can feel like the person that they're talking to, whether it's their doctor, whether it's their medical practitioner, whoever it might be, is there with them and is experiencing and understands that there's a lot of conflicting information, and that it can be very, very challenging to make good decisions right now, but that we're all in it together. There are things we know, the science is there, and that it's imperative that we trust in it to get to the next place we need to go, and to pull ourselves out of where we're at in this space, in this pandemic. So those would be a couple of things I would say.
Thank you, Pamela. Well, thank you, ladies. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your evenings to have this conversation with us, and I'm sure it won't be our last. Before we conclude, we did just want to place a couple of resources up on our screen. Dr. Holliday, if you could enable sharing, and then we just want to make sure that ultimately everyone knows that we are a trusted source for you if you're looking for a trusted source. We partner with organizations such as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as the NIH. And we try to make it so that you have a one-stop shop where you can find out information regarding the COVID-19 vaccine, but also other resources that are in your community. So this might look like pharmacies or healthcare organizations. This may even look like mental health clinics, and really other resources that relate to the social determinants of health, like transportation or childcare. So you can find our resources at covid-resources.org. And we also have our website that's available in the App Store. If you have access to the Google Play or the Apple App Store, you can also download it there. But if you have questions, please feel free to either call us at 1-877-904-5097, or you can email us at ncrn@msm.edu. Thank you, everyone.
And I'd just like to close us out for this evening. So again, I want to thank our panelists for this evening for taking the time to have this important conversation with us about the COVID-19 vaccine and misinformation. I think, so I would like to thank Dr. McIntyre, Ms. Kelly, as well as Ms. Mejia. I hope I didn't butcher that too badly.
All good.
Okay,
That was
great.
pretty good. I thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank you all again for joining us this evening in this very important conversation. And then just to wrap up, some of the important things that we heard this evening as it comes to misinformation is to always make sure that you are checking your sources. Look at the URLs of the websites that you are visiting. .org and .net are ones that are more trusted sources. Look at the data. Make sure that you're getting a full picture of the data and that it's not obsolete data or data that is really, really old. Is there a citation in what is being given to you? Where does that take you? Look out for catchwords such as freedom or free. when trying to discern if something is misinformation or not. And then finally, I love the analogy that Pam gave us about the truth sandwich. And I think this is really important when you're talking to family, friends, colleagues who may have some questions about the COVID-19 vaccine, is to always have that truth. Acknowledge without repeating the misinformation, and then provide that truth on the end. So I really like that truth sandwich. So again, thank you all for joining us this evening. And we do have some resources that are available for you that we will be emailing to you. So thank you again and have a good evening.